Shalom, brothers and sisters. Yesterday, when I was in Shabbat fellowship with a brother and a fellow elder, we ended up covering some information that put a lot of puzzle pieces together. Things that are happening right now on the world stage that to me is rather disturbing. And this video is being pre-recorded and it will be released at a later date. Today is September the 1st, 2024. And what I'm going to talk about here is this streams all the way back to Isaac and Ishmael out of the book of Genesis. Now, those of you who have read Genesis, you know that because Sarah couldn't get pregnant by her husband Abraham, so Sarah told Abraham to go into his wife's Egyptian maidservant Hagar, that she might have a child. And she did. His name was Ishmael. And many years later, there arose a dispute between Abraham and Sarah that only a child born of Sarah would receive Abraham's blessing and become his true heir. And this actually took place. Then Isaac was born. And at that point, Hagar and Ishmael were banished from the camp. And at the point of death, or close enough to it, Hagar begged and prayed that she not see the child die. And the messenger of Yahweh came down and said, your son will spring up many nations. So this brings me in a few thousand years into the future. Starting off with the crucifixion of Yeshua and his ascension, and how Yeshua prophesied that the Herod temple would be brought down and destroyed. Not one stone would be left one upon another. And that happened in the year AD 70. Several hundred years after that, the Catholic Church was born and came into the picture. Now, there are many different claims as to why this happened with the Catholic Church. I'm not 100% as certain as to which one is exactly true, why they did what they did. But there is enough evidence out there that supports that the Catholic Church was responsible for creating the religion of Islam. The Catholic Church, along with the myriads of Muslims, some Muslims were Catholic converts at the time. They found Muhammad, and they educated him and trained him. And Muhammad married a Muslim Catholic woman who had been brought out of a convent. Word spread far and wide about a new religion that had been cropping up from Muslims all over the place, and followers were very quick to join. Now, Muhammad's first daughter, her name was Fatma. Now, Fatma, to my understanding, is a location now to where Catholics go on pilgrimages to worship. So if you think about the information here, the Catholics are worshiping and praising on a pilgrimage the dead first daughter of Muhammad from the religion of Islam that they created. And from that point forward, Islam got to be so out of control that that's why the Crusades were created, to try to wheel everything back in, to get it back under control, which we all know that never happened. But springing forth into another 500 or so years, there was a monk from the Catholic Church named Martin Luther, who was the one that started the Protestant Reformation. Now, Martin Luther, coming in from the Catholic Church, brought all forms of paganism into the Protestant faith. Give me a moment. I'm going to pull some stuff up here for you. Okay. Now, that being said, the Protestant Church is still connected, unbeknownst to a lot of its members, to the Catholic Church because of a lot of the customs and traditions that are inside of Protestantism. However, Martin Luther was also a man who was anti-Semitic. The man absolutely hated the Jews. And there is a list of 7 things that he said that should happen to the Jews. I'm going to read those off. First is to set fire to their synagogues or schools. This is to be done in honor of our Lord and of Christendom, so that God might see that we are Christians. Second, I advise their houses to be razed and destroyed. Third, I advise that all their prayer books, Talmudic writings, in which such idolatry lies, cursing and blaspheming are taught, be taken from them. Fourth, I advise that the rabbis be forbidden to teach henceforth on pain and loss of life and limb. Fifth, I advise that safe conduct on the highways be abolished completely for the Jews, for they have no business in the countryside. Sixth, I advise that usury be prohibited to them, and that all cash, treasure, silver, and gold be taken from them. Seventh, I recommend putting a flannel, an axe, a hoe, and a spade, and a distaff or a spindle in the hands of young, strong Jews and Jewesses, men and women, and letting them earn their bread in the sweat of their brow. But if we are afraid that they might harm us or our wives, children, servants, etc., then let us eliminate the common sense of other nations such as France, Spain, etc., then eject them forever from the country. Now, we're going to proceed a few hundred years after this, during Nazi Germany's era, World War II. Adolf Hitler, who is known by his own hand, other constituents of his, Hermann Goering, Joseph Goebbels, Rudolf Eichmann, and so forth, were responsible for the complete and utter extermination of Jews throughout Germany and the West and any country that Nazi Germany occupied during that time period. Because of Martin Luther's anti-Semitic information, Hitler took that information and used that as a blueprint of how the Jews were to be treated. Going back to the Nuremberg laws and an event in history called Kristallnacht. It was also during this time that there was a Muslim man who befriended Adolf Hitler, who read a copy of Hitler's book Mein Kampf, and his name was Ayman al-Husseini. And this man and Hitler collaborated with each other, along with Catholic Church leaders, in response to the Jewish question. But it wasn't so much the German military or the Gestapo or the SS that dealt a lot with the Jewish population in the inner cities and sometimes even the ghettos. But it was the brainwashing that took place that turned neighbor against neighbor. The Hitler Youth Program was sprung into action. And I even have photographs, one very in particular, of Jewish woman being chased down the streets, half naked, faces bloodied, running from Hitler Youth that are swarming around her like a swarm of bees with sticks in their hands, beating her. And she's running for her life. So when the main body of the military and the government couldn't effectively do what needed to be done, you get the local population involved to do your work for you. People also associate the name or word Holocaust with what happened in World War II at this time. The word Holocaust means burnt sacrifice. And in the Bible, a burnt sacrifice was a tribute to God. But we know that Hitler did not believe in the God of Israel. Neither did the Catholic Church. Neither did the Muslims. So it was to the God of fortresses that Hitler believed in. gods of war. Now, counting almost 100 years into the future, what we see happening worldwide on a global scale right now is a lot of what happened during World War II is history repeating itself all over again. But what would the biggest target of this be? The United States. Outside of Israel, the United States has the largest Jewish population of any country in the world. Close to 8 million. Through other countries in Europe, France, Germany, Spain, the United Kingdom, here in the United States, with the mass open borders that we have, are seeing a massive influx of Muslims that are migrating in. Here in the United States, it would take an idiot not to realize that we have Islamic sleeper cells all over this country. And for those of you who do not know, sleeper cells are groups of individuals that can range anywhere from 3 to as many as a couple of dozen. They act and they can and behave just like everybody else in society. And they wait for a command from somebody higher up in their command structure to activate to a specific set of instructions of which they are supposed to do at that time. So what the things that we have seen and noticed in the buildup of things happening and taking place essentially is going to be Nazism 2.0 in Western society. Coming down specifically from the Muslims. You already have the youth in this country that have been brainwashed to hate the Jews. We always hear the chants from the river to the sea. And these students who have absolutely no idea what they've got themselves into keep chanting river to the sea. Although when they're asked which sea or river, they have no idea what they're talking about. This is the modernized version of the Hitler Youth. Only instead for Nazi Germany, it's for Islam. There have been several cases in many major cities where Jewish children, even up to college age, have had to change and wear different types of clothing than what they would normally wear to go to school and university, on fear that they would be attacked by local Muslim groups in the area. And just like in Nazi Germany, the Hitler Youth were trained from such a young age to hate the Jews. Just like Muslim children are taught from such an early age to hate the Jews. And to add insult to injury, the government of Joe Biden has handed out billions and billions of dollars to Iran, to Gaza, but the money going into Gaza, the relief aid, gets taken in by Hamas. Money also going to Yemen, which Hezbollah gets control of. So to go back and to sum things up, in case somebody is lost at this point. The Catholic Church came onto the scene first, that eventually created Islam. Muhammad's first daughter, Fatima, who is now somebody that the Catholics worship through pilgrimages. When the Protestant Reformation was created by Martin Luther drug in his anti-Semitic behavior and hatred towards the Jews, along with pagan customs and traditions, into the Protestant faith, which are still being practiced today. The Protestant churches, doesn't matter what denomination you are. Protestant churches, in many cases unbeknownst to the congregational members, at its core are anti-Semitic. And some people that are unaware of this by pure ignorance. And this goes in when you try to talk to people about keeping Torah or, keeping food laws. Well, that was only for the Jews. That's not for us anymore. Using replacement theology in the mix, thinking that they are now the chosen people of Yahweh, when they are not, and they never will be. So by refusing to keep the laws of Yahweh, refusing to keep the Sabbath, refusing to even have any conformity to anything that was put in place by the God of Israel, and I've even seen it on people's faces in the past, is almost a vehement hatred for doing it. It shows that the Protestant churches in their own right are anti-Semitic, just as Martin Luther was. You have everybody from the Catholic Church to the Protestants that do everything except what is written in the biblical scriptures. They've come up with their own God. They've come up with some different Messiah that I'm not even aware of. Refusing to observe the feast days, refusing to keep the Sabbath. And in place, you put these pagan holidays, things like Christmas, Halloween, Easter, and so forth. And in the end time, it is a matter of fact, over in, I forget where this is actually located at, but it's called the Abraham House. It's 3 buildings on the same property. One is a synagogue, one is a church, and one is a mosque. And they're all orientated towards their respected areas. The church is orientated towards the Vatican. The mosque is orientated towards Mecca. And the synagogue is orientated, the synagogue is orientated towards Jerusalem. All of the Abrahamic faiths being brought into one. However, that is with the Orthodox Jews, who do not keep the Torah, and they keep the Talmud and other rabbinical writings. with the way things that are happening, what I believe is going to take place is that the Catholic Church, the Islamists, and the Protestants are going to turn on everybody that keeps Yahweh's Torah at the end. So I'm going to read something to you out of the book of Revelation, chapter 12, 15 through 17. Excuse me, chapter 12, 15 through 17. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood with the dragon, which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. We were talking about these 3 verses yesterday. And what we are coming to believe is this flood that is going to come out of the dragon's mouth, the dragon being that of Satan, the flood, is going to be Islam itself. Because going back to what happened on October 7th of last year, there was a phrase, and not many people caught on to it, had to do with the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. But the phrase that was uttered, Al-Aqsa flood. And just like I said, the flood will go after everyone who keeps Torah. People in the Catholic Church created Islam. The Catholic Church created the Protestant faith. The Catholic Church's hands and its pagan idolatry are mixed into both Islam and Protestantism. So with that, brothers and sisters, hopefully you have been able to sit and listen to what I have put out here. As I said, I don't know exactly when I'm going to publish this video. It may be in hours, maybe in days, maybe in weeks. But I have to pray on it and pray for guidance. But I did the recording now while a lot of the information is still fresh in my head. So with that, brothers and sisters, I hope you have a blessed day. Shabbat Shalom.